What's going on, everybody? If you're seeing this page, that means the official Torian Rain Reloaded merch store is now available. To get access to the store, make sure you go ahead and click the store tab on my YouTube channel. From there, you will be able to see all the merch that is available. We have mugs, shirts, hoodies, joggers, and so much more to come. All original designs made by yours truly, Torian Rain Reloaded. Now go ahead and get your merch today, and you can feel nothing in style. What's going on, everybody? I'm here to do a review for The Exorcist Believer. Now, I know what you're thinking. Torian, you know you were dead wrong for doing a movie review and uploading it on a Sunday that deals with a film about demonic and devil possession. Yes, I know I did that very, very intentionally. It is what it is. So here I am to talk about The Exorcist Believer. So this movie is basically a sequel to the 1973 film starring Linda Blair, which of course is gone down as a classic, as like one of the most scariest films of all time. Like, it's pretty much in the top 10 of everybody's horrors list when they talk about the scariest films of all time. And it's crazy because this year marks 50 years since the release of the original film. It's crazy how fast time actually indeed flies. But I'm gonna go ahead and read the synopsis of what the film reads. When his daughter Angela and her friend Catherine show signs of demonic possession, it unleashes a chain of events that forces single father Victor Fielding to confront the nadir of evil. Terrified and desperate, he seeks out Chris McNeil, the only person alive who witnessed anything like it before. So this film is basically the slight difference with this film compared to the other one, and even more films that deal with any type of possession, is that it has two people that are possessed this time instead of just one. Usually they tend to just do the one person possession like they do all the time, and it's usually always typically a female, a white female at that. But this time they up the ante and say, okay, what if we did two this time and have one of them be a black female, a black girl as well? Now let me just say this: the performances from the actors in this movie were very good across the board. The two actresses that they got to play the young girls that were possessed, they did an amazing job. They really sold their performances as far as the movements and being able to freak out the audience. At least if they didn't at least scare them, they definitely freaked them out with the performances and the way that they were able to move their body and contort themselves. And I know that could be very stressful, especially for a young actress or a young actor to do something that crazy with themselves, and it's very probably hard to do that. I'm sure the actress Linda Blair, who played in the original Exorcist, could definitely have some stories to tell as it pertains to that, considering at the time she was, I believe, 12 or 13 when she did that movie, which is around the same age as these girls in this movie. So I like that they kind of had them be around the same age as the original in that regard. So basically, one of the girls, like I said, her name is Angela. She's a black girl. Her mother ends up dying in an earthquake in Port-au-Prince in Haiti. And I said, I wonder if they're playing this off of the actual earthquake that happened in Haiti back in 2010. And sure enough, it was. And then something happens. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it comes full circle towards the end of the movie. And I was like, oh, okay, I see how this indeed went the way that it did. And she ends up, they fast forward years later, she ends up, having a friend by the name of Catherine, and they go off into the woods somewhere, and they basically try to communicate with Angela's mother. And then that's when stuff starts to go wrong, because eventually, when you try to contact spirits from the other side, a lot of the times you're not supposed to play with forces like that. And of course, one thing leads to another, and they end up getting possessed. I would say that the performance by the actor who plays Angela's dad, his name is Victor, did a very good job as well of being a father, who is doing his best to raise a young teenage daughter on his own, considering what ended up happening to his wife. And he had to make that conscious decision of, does his wife live or does he save his daughter? And of course, we all know what the outcome of that ended up being. And it just basically shows you the day-to-day. He's a photographer. He basically takes family portraits that as a career, again, while being a single dad to his daughter. Then of course you have Catherine's family. She has both of her parents, and she has two other younger siblings. They're very heavy into the church. They're very heavily religious, and that's basically I guess you can say a point break for them, because now you have a daughter that's possessed by something that is very anti-Christ, and you don't know exactly what to do in a situation such as this. Like, what do you do? At this point, it's like your faith is indeed being tested. What do you believe, or how strong is your faith, and how strong is your belief? One thing I did like about this movie is that, unlike the original Exorcist film, where they only use Christianity in order to exorcise the demon out or to do the exorcism, they use multiple forms of religion in order to deal with this exorcism, because they realized it probably, one, was not going to work. Like, you just couldn't simply solely rely on just having one form of religion be the thing that's going to get the demon out of these girls. So I like that they use multiple forms. They even used root work. I couldn't believe they actually had root work in this movie as well. And it's crazy how the root work ended up working itself out in the situation, considering that whenever, I would say, black people do extra spiritual type of things, it's always seen as a negative. But the way that, in the direction that they went in this movie, well, I'll leave y'all up to see it in case y'all want to see it. So I thought that was very interesting as well, that they use multiple forms of religion in order to do this exorcism instead of just relying on one. I like that they kind of went back to the beginning and also bringing in old characters. They ended up bringing in the Chris McNeil character who played Reagan's mother in the original one, so to have some sort of continuity there and say, you know, she's here, she's still very much alive, she's done interviews over the years, she's become an author and told people about her story. If y'all saw the original one, she went through literal hell dealing with the demonic possession of her own daughter, and that was just crazy as it was. It's crazy how a movie like that came out 50 years ago and still holds up in the rankings that it does, as far as the lengths that they were willing to go and what envelopes they were willing to push in order to get their point across. And like, hey, we've seen all these other horror movies come before us, but I think we'll take it from here. And a lot of other movies have been trying to follow that blueprint ever since. Some have succeeded, some have not. Another thing that I liked about this movie was the makeup. Whoever was in charge of the makeup for the two girls when they were like in that final form of their possession, they did a very, very good job of making them look extremely grotesque and hideous. It's like, it was crazy how they ended up having them look in that scene when they were doing the actual exorcism itself. And it was really freaky looking. Like, it's not something you would want to wake up and see or walk into a dark alley. Shoot, I wouldn't even want to see that in a lit alley with how they had them looking. And again, that goes back to the performance of the girls, because, you know, you can throw all of that makeup on, but if the performance is weak, then it's like, okay, then no one's going to really take it seriously. But the makeup and the prosthetics that they used, which was practically all practical effects, from how they had their heads looking kind of swollen a little bit, to how they had the veins on their skin, the contacts in their eyes, them spitting out this black tar looking thing, the green, you know, blood or whatever that was. All of that was very, very well done and sold pretty good. Like I said, that's not something you would want to see typically. Of course, you know, in the original, her spitting out that pea soup, like no one saw that coming at all, and like that was very nasty and hideous to look at during that particular time. Especially the scene where she projectile vomited onto the actor that played the priest. Like, yeah, that was very let me put it this way. I know he probably rushed to take a shower after that scene was done. I know I would have. Now I'm gonna get into some of the things that I didn't like, because there were some things that I didn't like. Where I was given things that I do like, I have to also give the cons as well. One thing that I didn't like is how long it took for them to actually get to the good part as far as the possession goes. I mean, I understand we had to build up, and you know, they got lost in the woods and you had to go and find them. They were missing for 3 days and so on and so forth. But it's like they did, you know, the possession thing, and it's like they showed a little bit of it, then they stopped. They showed a little bit, then they stopped. They showed a little bit and they stopped. And then one time I feel like they stopped for way too long. It's like, okay, we know that you're like trying to fill in some gaps here, but it's like, Can we move this thing along and get to the part that a lot of people came to pay and see? We know what we came to see. So the thing is, with the original one, when that possession began, it's like it was constantly hitting over and over again. Like everything was constantly happening one behind the other, and you would think that it would be more hit considering we're dealing with two people who are possessed this time instead of just one. So I wish again that they would have, once they got on a pace, that they would have stayed there instead of just kind of zooming in and then slowing down, zooming in and then slowing down. It wasn't really until the end where they did the exorcism part where it stood solid right in that particular area. Another thing I didn't like, and it was actually more so of a person I didn't like, the father, not the actor himself, but the character of the father who played Catherine's father. I think everybody in that theater couldn't stand him, because it was certain things that he would do or certain things that he would say that was like, oh God, we wouldn't feel bad if the demon hopped into him and took over his body and contorted him all over the damn place, because he was doing some things that was just reckless. Like it was a scene in the movie where everyone takes their shoes off in the house because, you know, that was a part of the ritual, or that was, I don't know, you know, some people just don't like having the shoes on in the home, but I think that was part of the ritual. Here he gonna want to walk into the house and not take his damn shoes off, and his wife was like, take your shoes off, and he's like, nah, I'm not gonna take them off. And then he kept running away, like while everybody's in the room trying to do this thing and trying to exorcise the demons. Mind you, his daughter is one of the ones possessed. He's outside on the porch or on the deck or wherever that is, just standing there looking out, like being scared or hiding somewhere and whatnot. And the one time he does make a move, it almost cost Victor his daughter's life. And the crazy part about it is, him doing that, I mean, like I said, it could have cost his daughter's life, but it's something that happens that ends up working in Victor's daughter's favor, and they end up backfiring on Catherine's father. And what he did, like I said, it just backfired. So I really didn't care for her father, because he came across as holier than thou. And you know how a lot of those people who are very overly religious, that think they know everything and they think they can tell you about this, that, and the third, especially if you're not a person who's religious yourself, then they think they can tell you what to do or how you should be when it comes to a particular faith. He's one of those. I could tell that he was a low-key Bible thumper, and if you don't like Bible thumpers, you're definitely not going to like his character. I really could not stand his character. If you see the movie, you'll see exactly what I mean. He's one of the people that you wish you could just like go to the screen and thump him over the head with a Bible. And the last thing that I guess I could say I didn't really like is the fact that it didn't really scare me that much. And I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't really expecting to be that scared, considering I've seen the original one so many times. I remember the first time, short story, I remember the first time I watched it, I think I was about 13, so this was like in 2002. I was at home in the basement, you know, by myself, and you know, back then you just, whenever you turned on cable, you just had to be lucky to catch whatever was coming on. There was no streaming, you couldn't pause it, you couldn't rewind, you couldn't save it to watch it later. You had to catch it at that time. And I was on HBO, and sure enough, at 11 p.m. I saw The Exorcist was coming on, and I always talked to my dad about that movie, but I never had a chance to actually watch it. So I sat down there and I watched it in the basement at 11 p.m. at night, and like straight up watched it and went to bed completely traumatized. My then 13-year-old self watching that movie. This movie watching right now, I guess maybe because I'm older and I've seen the original one so many times, and you know, you're gonna try to see if you can compare it or see if it's better, but I'm gonna be honest, it's not better than the original one. The original one still eclipses this one. But if you're a person that scares easily, this one might actually, you know, get you a little bit. There were a couple of jump scares in there, but at the places where you would not expect the jump scare to occur. But other than that, it wasn't that scary to me. But again, like I said, I kind of went into it knowing I wouldn't be scared that much. But you know, it is what it is. But you know, different tastes for different people. It is what it boils down to. I think another reason why that is because I've seen the original so many times, and the thing is that movie set the bar so high that if anything came after it, it's like everyone has to try to meet that bar, and a lot of them pretty much always completely fall short. And this is one of the ones where that actually happens, and you don't want to overdo it because then it becomes silly and, you know, kind of predictable and all the things like that. And that's probably why a lot of people don't like the idea of a remake to this movie or anything like that, because then it's like now you're trying to compete with what's already been done. Like, just let it stand on its own as a classic, as an icon, as a legendary film, and try to just build something else, not necessarily from there, but from the idea of, oh, let's go in another direction. Let's just pump out maybe a different type of a horror film. It doesn't have to necessarily be another exorcism type, because, and it's always going to be compared to this one. So when you put all of that together, if people don't like this movie, it's mainly going to be because the original still holds up so high, and they're pretty much still trying to ride the wave of what's already been done. Sort of like what they did with Halloween, you know, with the 3 Halloween movies they came out within the last couple of years of riding the wave. But then, you know, that's Halloween. That thing has a whole like 30, 40, 50 plus, like almost decade franchise behind it. But that's really all it boils down to for me. But that's pretty much my review for The Exorcist Believer. Y'all let me know what y'all think about it down in the comments, and I will talk to you in the next one.